Today we're going to talk about critical theory, more specifically, as critical theory relates to the Frankfurt School, its most prominent adherents. Um, Now, critical theory, it combines sociology, psychology, cultural studies, and political economy into a social theory designed to affect social transformation. And here you can see um, basically what we're going to cover. Critical theory really has about 7 or 8 key tenets, which you can see a breakdown of those here. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of them as more key than the ones that are, of all the ones that are here. Um, and the first is that all knowledge is historical and produced in and under particular social conditions. Now, that is to say that critical theory stresses that individuals' experience, views of the world, and concepts change in relation to historical development. And therefore, both our theories and perceptual apparatuses, as well as the objects of knowledge, are historical. Another is that the assumptions of traditional theory, such as the separation of subject and object, fact and value, should be rejected. And really what this is saying is that their critical theorists believe that there is no separation between the researcher and what he or she is researching. They reject the notion that theory is a pure activity of thought, and that the theorist is a disinterested spectator who is limited to describing the world as it is. What they do say is that the structures from which both social reality and the theories that seek to account for it are constructed, and this would include, of course, critical theory itself. Another is that critical theory rejects the notion that the scientific method, empiricism, positivism, is the best and only source of valid knowledge and should therefore remain above criticism. And this is one of the key ideas put forth, is that it was a rejection of what heretofore in the 1940s and 30s had been looked upon as, the end all and be all of research, was that the scientific method, with its claims to objectivity, is the road that should be taken. And regarding objectivity, critical theory rejects the notion of scientific objectivity. They do not believe that it is a sufficient guarantee of truth. And so here, what we want to discuss are primarily Adorno and Horkheimer, Max Horkheimer, and Theodore Adorno, who were some of the principal architects and proponents of critical theory. And critical theory evolved over time. Its proponents first sought to mobilize individuals to revolutionary action against what they viewed as a hegemonic capitalist system that sought to curtail social liberties, and to promulgate inequality and oppression. And later, in abject disillusionment over the masses' seeming inability to combat domination, and this was during and after World War II, they came to socially criticize reason itself, which they believed had been co-opted by those in power to strengthen and reinforce the status quo, as well as rationalize the subjugation and the brutalization of the masses, such as that which had propelled the Nazis to power. And if you remember your history lessons, you will note that the Nazis used reason as a way to justify their atrocities with regard to the Germans and the Jewish peoples and other quote unquote undesirables. Now, further on, the critical theorists, like the Frankfurt School, that's really what we're talking about here. They expanded their criticism to science, technology, to instrumental reason, and a theory of the administered society. Now, one of the primary members of the Frankfurt School, Theodor Adorno, really put forward no definite answers to the traditional problems of philosophy, but he actually just confined himself, as well as some of the others, to just exploding philosophy as it was, um, since by its urge toward positiveness, it inevitably denigrated into acceptance of the status quo, which was namely the domination of man by man. Now, critical theorists believe it to be the responsibility of all varieties of scholarship to work for the elimination of oppression, including oppression of scholarship itself, through disruption and dissipation of power. They stand on continual attack because for them there is no solution, only the struggle. They're very much intrigued, and their interest was piqued by the contradictions between progressive American rhetoric of egalitarianism and the reality of racial and class discrimination. The critical theorists sought to deeply challenge and respond to the social science establishment's belief that their research could describe and accurately measure any dimension of human behavior. For the critical theorists like Horkheimer, the task of critical theory was to penetrate the world of things, and these are his words, to show the underlying relations between persons. Now, the Frankfurt School affirmed that society is subject to the domination of exchange values, with such an environment reducing individuals and things to a common level and a homogeneous anonymity. And in this case, Adorno was very prolific in this type of idea. This philosophy expresses and affirms that society can't do justice to the variety of phenomena or the independence of different aspects of life. On the one hand, it homogenizes society. On the other, it reduces people and things to atoms. As well, science is a party to the general conspiracy of civilization against man, as the critical theorist argued, because it identifies science, that is, rationality with measurability. It reduces everything to quantities and excludes qualitative differences from the scope of knowledge. In the figure, we can see how members of the Frankfurt School themselves distinguish critical theory from scientific theories. Um, the aim or goal and the way agents can use to apply them. In scientific theories, the aim is to produce successful manipulation of the external world. These theories have instrumental use. And the application of this is, if the theories are correct, they enable the agents who have mastered them to cope effectively with the environment and thus pursue their chosen ends successfully. Critical theorists, on the other hand, the aim is emancipation and enlightenment and making agents aware of hidden coercion. And of course, the application would be the freeing of individuals from that coercion and putting them in a position to determine where their true interests lie. Of course, and the second is the logical or cognitive structure. Now, in scientific theories, these theories are objectifying. That means that, at least in typical cases, one can distinguish clearly between the theory and the objects to which the theory refers. The theory isn't itself part of the object domain it describes. And really what that is saying is that the researcher in the scientific paradigm, the researcher is separated from what is being researched, and the two are not mixing. However, critical theories claim that these are claimed to be reflective or self-referential. A critical theory is itself always a part of the object domain which it describes. Critical theories are always in part about themselves. And the third is the kind of evidence which would be relevant for determining whether or not they are cognitively accepted, the theories that is. And with scientific theories, these theories require empirical confirmation through observation and experiment. Critical theories, on the other hand, are cognitively acceptable only if they survive a more complicated process of evaluation, the central part of which is a demonstration that they are reflectively acceptable.